Can you guess which of these vintage Halloween pieces are actually DIYs? In today's video, I'll show you how to take the vintage Halloween pieces that you have and supplement them with DIYs to make your collection more full. My inspiration was this picture that I saw on Facebook, and this person had the cutest collection. It was a lot of Johanna Parker Design, which I wasn't familiar until now. But people are clamoring to TJ Maxx and wherever they can go to try to find these pieces, and they are adorable. I haven't found one out in the wild, so I'm making my own. I'm Rhonda, by the way, the Distressed Princess. Happy Saturday morning. Let's get started. So the first place I started was the thrift stores. I was looking for a teapot to make the Laughing Luna teapot by Johanna Parker, or my version of it anyway. Then I picked up one of these canisters because I thought it had the shape of Gus the Ghost. And I really just wanted one of these orange plates, but $5 for the whole stack of 6 wasn't bad. Back home with my stuff, I found a larger teapot, so I was going to have 2 chances to do this teapot, and I thought the smaller one might be my guinea pig. Anyhow, when I get them all back home, I took them outside and I spray painted them with gloss white spray paint. Back inside, after everything is dry, and admittedly my spray painting skills are horrible, I have paint runs, and so this is the good side of my teapot showing. I decided to sculpt some cheeks on the teapot using this Crazy Art air dry clay. It's Model Light clay. It's real foamy and airy and easy to work with, and just the easiest way I thought to try to make this teapot look like it has ceramic cheeks that was already made there. So basically I smushed that modeling clay onto the teapot to make round shapes like cheeks, and then I took the back end of a paintbrush to kind of draw out a circle and remove the excess that I didn't need. And then I just used my fingers to smooth it out, and then I used the back end of the paintbrush again to make one indentation where the smile is going to go. And I continued to fiddle and smush it and sculpt it until I liked how it was blending in. And you can use a little bit of water. That's what's in the little blue bowl. Dip your fingers in a little bit of water to help you smooth out any of the little creases and help it to look more smooth against your teapot. When I was kind of satisfied with the shape of it, I lifted it up with my little spatula from the Dollar Tree, and I used crazy glue to make sure that it's going to stay stuck on my teapot, and smooth it out once more. Next, you need a nose, and so I rolled out a little tiny piece of the clay, and I'm using crazy glue to stick a little tiny dot on for a nose. Then I took a damp rag and I kind of cleaned up around where the clay was a little messy. The next step is to paint the teapot, and I chose to use this Snow White chalk paint, but I believe that white acrylic paint would also work as well. And as a matter of fact, it might do better because I'm not so certain that this right here, this white chalk paint on top of that clay, doesn't cause cracking. So I would really rather probably go back and redo this with acrylic paint, but mine's already done. And paint the lid of your teapot too. See, so I have some definite cracking, but I really believe that that is due to the chalk paint. And so I'm going to fix mine just with a little bit of rubbing alcohol, and I can smooth out those cracks. This is where I decided I should have used acrylic paint to start with. So now I'm going over it with another coat of acrylic paint, and I was hoping to seal in. You want that clay that you've molded onto your teapot to look like it was naturally sculpted there just as much as you possibly can. But don't be too fussy, because by the time you paint everything on, it's gonna look great. So I have my paint marker out and I'm going to draw in the smile, and it just didn't fill in as well as I had hoped. So then I get out my trusty paint and paintbrush and I brushed in the smile. And I had a picture of Laughing Luna pulled up on my computer that I was looking at as I was doing my painting. I drew the eyes and the eyebrows on with my acrylic marker, and now I'm going to take my acrylic paint and I'm going to paint the nose. The cheeks have a mauve-y kind of color to them, and I didn't have a paint color that was like that, so I'm using some eyeshadow from the dollar store, and I think it makes the perfect little cheek blush for her. And in my opinion, this is what makes every character cute. It's the little white dot in the center of their eyes. It's what gives them life, I think. Now then, after the face is dry, completely dry, so you don't mess it up by accident, paint the handle and the spout of your teapot with some black paint. And again, I had chose to use chalk paint because I had just been using chalk paint for so long and it just goes on everything so well. It's just my go-to, but I really think that acrylic paint probably would be better on a project like this, but you know, chalk paint works too. The original Laughing Luna teapot has a star on top of the lid, but I decided to make my life easier and just paint the little knob on my lid black. But I really think you could use some clay and make one if you wanted to. And the final step is to glaze the teapot, and you can pick up any kind of varnish or glaze, even non-yellowing polyurethane would work. This is not going to be a food grade teapot anymore. This is for decoration only. Now, because I used black chalk paint on the handle and the spout, I had to be very careful when I was glazing not to drag that black over into the white. Now, the face I wasn't worried about because I did all that with acrylic marker and paint, regular acrylic paint, so that was fine. So here's another reason why to use black acrylic paint. Just use all acrylic paints, craft paints on this project. Stay away from the chalk paint completely, and I believe yours will turn out better than mine did. And my little baby teapot turned out even better than the big one. I love my baby teapot. And here they are, and they are so stinking adorable. I cannot even believe how easy it was to make these. Next up are these ornaments from Johanna Parker, and to do this I picked up some Sculpey polymer clay. Now this is something that I have never ever done before. So I watched some videos, some tips and tricks, and found out that rubbing alcohol is something you need to have on hand along with your clay tools and maybe a mat to work on. Always clean your surface with the rubbing alcohol. This gets all the dirt and dust off the surface before you roll your clay out. Okay, so now I am using one piece of the Sculpey clay and I'm rolling it out. Conditioning the clay is important. You have to get it workable. And this was so much fun, guys. I loved playing with this clay. It was like, you know, childhood and Play-Doh. So I rolled out each piece of that orange Sculpey clay. I stacked them all on top of each other so that I think there's 4 chunks in each little package, 4 or 5. I rolled each one out into sort of a circle and layered them. And that's how I'm going to make the face of the sucker. Then take something round like a cookie cutter or a mason jar like I'm using to do the circle shape. And I used the clay tool to cut around. I wanted the top to be really smooth, so I tried to keep that as smooth as possible and I smoothed around the edges. So then I pulled up on my computer pictures of the ornaments so that I could use paint and clay to make them look alike. And here's what the little critters were doing while I was working, being so lazy, but always my biggest fans. Now I'm working on the stick. So I've got my black clay. I'm going to roll it out into a stick shape. And to make the stripe for the stick, then I got some of the orange clay. I rolled it out really thin and I cut a super thin slice to make a wrapping to go like a stripe on the stick. And some tricks that I learned though were that if you roll it too thin, it's going to stick to your surface. Try not to do that. And also, the plastic knife didn't work well for cutting the thin stripes or any of the detail pieces I'm going to do, so I used a metal steak knife. It helped me to get much more detail. To make the black and white checkered edge of the sucker I'm working on, I rolled out some white clay and I went around the edge of the sucker. And then I rolled out some black clay and cut out some tiny little rectangles and I wrapped them all around the edge of the white. I pressed it all together so that it looked like it's all painted that way. See, I'm trying to get most of my color from the clay. Instead of relying so much on my painting skills, I'm using the clay as much as I can. I will be using acrylic markers to make the eyes and some of the little details on the face, but most of the color is coming from the clay. Here's a trick I learned from watching other YouTubers who do polymer clay. If you get too much dirt or another color of clay in that you don't want, like this black has gotten in the white, you could use alcohol, the rubbing alcohol, and a paper towel or Q-tip, and you can wipe the clay back clean. Next, I sculpted the hat, which was a simple little triangle to go on top out of the black clay. And to attach these things, I'm just smushing it all together. The polymer clay sticks to itself pretty well. If you wanted to, you could use wire and attach with wire inside, but mine turned out just fine without it. I had fun making the little details like the ruffle on the hat and the white ruffle wrapper on the bottom and using those little sculpting tools to make the shapes. And I found it really relaxing and fun. To make the face, I rolled out two tiny little pieces of orange clay to make the cheeks. This is what makes these ornaments come alive. It pops out just like on the Laughing Luna teapot. Just make the little cheeks, stick them on, make them kind of, flatten them out and attach them to your face. Well, the ornament's face. Then his little round black nose. And I used the back end of my paintbrush to draw in the mouth and I inlaid it with some of the black clay. I also used the back end of my paintbrush to draw in the eyes, eyebrows, and eyelashes so that it'll have more dimension when I paint them in with my markers later. The oven gets set to 275 and you bake your polymer clay for 30 minutes. And actually, I think I went an extra 10 because I wasn't sure if it was hardened enough. I didn't really know what to expect. And I almost forgot this step. I was so eager to get it baked and painted that I almost forgot to put my hanger. And this actually is a bra clasp, I think, that I got out of my little box of doodads. Works just fine. Take your whatever you find for a hanger and poke it down into the clay and smoosh it around and it'll get baked inside. And here is the second one that I made. Here's the first one, isn't he cute? But I wanted to make sure that I could do this correctly before I showed you guys. So my guinea pig worked fine. I'm using my acrylic markers to do the details of the faces. Again, I'm looking at a picture on my computer as I'm drawing this with my markers, and they're really simple shapes, really simple, just happy eyes, and don't forget the little white dots that makes them come alive. And I loved using the white marker, and that's what I used for the cheeks on the other ornament. And it also works for highlight details and just to give just a little bit of color. So you can use this marker and smudge it with your finger. And that's how I did the cheeks and how to make some of the orange parts look more vintage and old. I think if you want the back of your ornaments to look really nice and finished, you should roll out a flat sheet of one color, one black, white, orange, one matching color, and smush on the back, and it would all be a flat, nice, even thing on the back. But instead, I'm painting, because I didn't have enough clay to do that. I'm painting the back of mine so it will look a little nicer, and so that I can put the date. And then the last step is to put your glaze on. I had some little baubles that weren't just perfect, but I am so in love with these little ornaments and so happy that I made them. Next up is the little canister that I thought was the shape of Gus the Ghost, and so I'm going to draw his face onto this with my black acrylic marker. I used eyeshadow again to give some little blushy cheeks. And you could stop there and he would be pretty cute, but I wanted to do some extra. So I took the lid and I made a witch hat out of the Model Light foam clay. And so I just sculpted a witch hat. It was really easy to pull that foam clay, and you could pull it to a point and bend it over and make the cute curl. Then I painted the witch hat with 2 coats of black acrylic paint. And while that was drying, I worked on my jack-o'-lantern. I've had this in my Halloween decorations for a few years. I think it came from Michael's, but I'm not positive. I liked this one because it had an open top and I can put a tea light down inside of. But I'm going to paint this pumpkin with the color terracotta instead of a bright orange because I thought it matched the vintage colors better. I picked this ribbon up at Dollar Tree, and I'm going to make a ruffle around the bottom of Gus, and the ribbon was too wide, so I had to half it lengthwise, and I used hot glue to just pinch and ruffle as I went along, just hot glue, and make the little pleats all the way around the bottom. Then when you set it down on top of the jack-o'-lantern, you can kind of flare out the ruffles so that they really show nicely. I love how my version of Gus came together. I think he's pretty cute, although I did forget to put the little white dots in his eyes. If you look close, I forgot that right here. But I fix it before the final end of the video, so... Now this one is using one of the orange plates that I thrifted, and it's something that I have done before. It's making the man in the moon, and I made my own DIY stencil to do this, and I will link that video down in the description box below if you want to learn how to make this stencil. You can also purchase them off of Etsy. I've seen this very one for, just a couple of bucks. So anyway, I've got this stencil that I have made. I'm going to lay it down on my plate, and I'm going to use a bouncer brush to pounce on some black chalk paint. And remove the stencil while your paint is still wet. Now I'm going to use a charger from Dollar Tree. I'm going to paint it black with this acrylic satin black paint. And I was so impressed with the finish on this black satin paint. Where have I been looking at my paint. I don't guess I've ever had the satin. Get the satin because it's a nice finish. And I painted the whole thing black, and then I go all around the edge with white, and that is going to be behind our man in the moon and give him a lot more interest. I have this set up with a cookbook holder, or you could also use an easel. Now the pedestals that I use for the teapots are just bowls from the Dollar Tree. You can use your hair dryer or heat gun to heat up the stickers on the bottom of these and they peel right off. Now you can see I have one bowl that's taped up with masking tape to make stripes. And then I'm going to use this pouncer brush to make polka dots on the other one. And I'm showing you here, I've made my stripes kind of, you have to use that masking tape at an angle toward the bottom to accommodate for the curves. But just as long as your edges are straight, then you'll be fine. I used that nice black satin paint. Once again, I did 2 coats. And here I am making the polka dots with this bouncer brush. I had a couple of spots that bled under my tape, so I fixed it up with rubbing alcohol and a paper towel. And if you wanted to, you could absolutely glue your teapot or your cookie jar or your ghost on top of these bowls, and they could be permanent. And here's some things that I thrifted that go right along with the vintage vibe, so you can find this stuff pretty inexpensively. I love these treat bags, so vintage. And a pretty palm garland. I already had this set of stacking ghost, and the pumpkin mugs both came from the Dollar Tree. The orange and white one there on my coffee bar. I allow myself 1 ceramic per year. I already had some of these. This is the one I bought this year. He came from Ross for only $7. And this is how I do it, folks. I get 1 ceramic per year, and then I fill in the whole rest of the collection with DIYs until I can fill the whole thing out with actual vintage pieces. But I tell you, I don't think I have a need for an actual real Laughing Luna because I love my little baby one that I made. This was a joy making these decorations. I think you guys will really enjoy it too. Give the polymer clay a try. I had no idea it was going to be so much fun, and I'm going to do some more. So have a great weekend, and I will see you next Saturday.